Hello everybody, it is I, LurgyPie, and today I'm showing off a bit of a game that I'm working on. I'm starting a new series of game devlogs on this current project of mine. It kind of doesn't really have a name. The project title is SUQUA for subaquatic because the whole game will take place underwater, but it doesn't actually have a real title yet, so that's something that I'm working on. But the whole point of the game is you get in this robot here and you kind of run around and go underwater. As you can see, I've gotten actually quite a bit done already. You can walk around. He has an animation for walking. He has no aerial animation, so when he's in the air, he'll kind of just, as you can see, freeze. There's physics. All of these squares and stuff have colliders. He can move. He can jump. He can do a bit more than that, but I'm not really going to show that off right now. It's really simple as of yet. The blue blocks that we're working on is all randomly generated. The goal would be sets of areas that are mostly designed combined with areas that are randomly generated because random generation is boring. So I'll try and set up a system to check for interesting generations on the randomly generated mountains and stuff and put interesting stuff on there. So here you can see he can kind of float around because he's underwater, but again, he has no animations. So the goal is for this week is to set up a bit of a world system. As you can see in this footage here, he does have a bit of like areas, I guess. There's the brownish area as well as this big bluish area. And the bluish area is randomly generated and the brownish area is all just super flat. Which with the goal of like putting things on the brown area and then randomly generating blue mountainy area in between so that like you go, I don't know, we'll see. But that's the idea right now. And of course there needs to be more interesting stuff and hand designed stuff in there in order to make it not absolutely boring. But the goal right now is to separate these things. Right now, there's a kind of biome system, but I want to separate those. And then I also want to get working on more animations, a jumping animation. And then he has two other things he can do. He can kind of float around and he can dash. And I want to add animations for those. They'll mostly just be in the legs. The body doesn't really do anything right now. And there are no particles to show when he like jumps or dashes because I haven't programmed any of that in, but that's the goal. So this footage here starts out with me working on the animations for the character. I accidentally forgot, as is normal for me, to record this process, so I missed out on the beginning of the jump animation like design. As you can see, it's already mostly done here, but I'm still working on a bit of it in this footage. I'm going to start with just one leg because the other leg will be literally the exact same but behind the robot and recolored. So I want to make sure I have the animation on the first leg set up before I move to the second leg. And from here on, you'll see that I kind of failed on my goal of working on a world system and the animations. I actually spent this entire week focusing solely on setting up the animations properly. I had to reprogram a bit of the animation system, as you can see here. And I had to figure out a good way to render the jumping animation in the way I wanted to. So actually, I'm going to try and break that down for you here in a second. I wanted to make the jumping animation interesting. I didn't want it to just be rendering the animation going up and the animation going down. I didn't want it just to be a static animation, you know. So initially, once I got the animation set up and split up the animation systems, it started out where if you're in the air, it just runs the jumping animation over and over, which was expected because I hadn't set up anything to actually try and do it more interestingly. And so I came across the idea of basing the frame of the animation on our velocity in the air, or I guess on our position in the air, on how long we've been in the air, was the initial idea. The inspiration for this came kind of from Starbound, where when you jump, the animation I found really interesting and smooth, and I always assumed it was based off of your aerial velocity, because at least that's what it looked like, and I wanted to try setting up a system similar to that in my own in my game. And so initially, I had to figure out how to do this, and the idea I came across was basically to split it up. So initially, the way I had it programmed was it'll check for the graphics, which is separated from the logic, will check for a change in the y value. Whenever it tries to draw, it'll check to see if the y value that we are at is different than the y velocity we had before. And if our y velocity did change, it would check to see, hey, did we start going upwards? And were we not moving or going downwards before? If we are already going upwards, well, then it doesn't matter. But if we were going downwards or not moving, then that means we suddenly changed to upwards, which constitutes, I guess, a jump, right? And so I use that to detect if we were jumping. And when we jumped, I would store the y velocity of the jump. Basically, I would take that y velocity and use it to calculate the amount of frames that I would actually be inside the air, with the intention of splitting up based on the amount of frames what animation frame, what actual part of the animation to draw on screen. As it turns out, this was way overcomplicated and just a bit of a pain, and it didn't end up working. I ended up deleting all of that code to restart over from scratch because it was getting late and I didn't want to try that. So here we are. This is paint.net. I'm going to try drawing out what I ended up doing, how I ended up actually setting up this entire system to kind of visualize and help you guys understand visually what I did. So I changed it to check for a change in y value. I got rid of the part that checks for jumps, and I decided to just check if we were going downwards or upwards, right? And so from there, I could split our velocity based off of a standard velocity, I guess I set up. I based it off the height of a jump to try and split it off of that. So when we jump, we're going to be moving upwards at 30 pixels per second. That's how fast we go upwards. And so in response to, so I decided to base everything off of this upwards jump velocity. So I decided to split the 30 pixels per second upwards with the intention of setting each frame to a different section of our velocity. So if we start going 30 pixels per second upwards, right? We're going upwards at 30 pixels per, oh no, 30, yeah. Oh, there's a 0 and 30. We're going upwards at 30 pixels per second. I decided to split this entire length into different pieces, into like halves, then quarters, and so on like this. So we take a half of that, and then we take a half of the upper half, and then we take a half of the upper half, and then we take a half of the upper half, etc. for however many frames. So like the frame 0 goes here, frame 1 goes here, frame 2 goes here, etc. in our upwards jumping velocity, with the intention of making it so that the frames and the animation would be based off how fast we were moving upwards, and then I just mirrored this whole process again downwards. And so that was a lot simpler than calculating the frames and then trying to attempt to do this. The whole process was the same, but in the end it didn't work out. So I wrote the code for this, and actually it ended up working, and I got fully functioning, and yeah, I'm very proud of at least that I got it done. I'm not actually sure if I want to keep this animation. I was looking, and the animation that I have, like if it just runs at the same FPS as how the animation for the robot, it might be fine if I just render the animation once when we're jumping upwards, and then once again when we start moving downwards, which wouldn't be too hard to check and might actually be simpler than doing it this way. Well, it would definitely be simpler, but I haven't tested it to see if I like that visually. But that's that. That's what I did this week. I ended up working the whole week on this one animation. I'm satisfied, at least, with how it is right now. I might try changing it to make it better because it's not entirely everything that I want, I guess. It's just the amount, it's weird, you know, because it's based off the velocity. So I might just try rendering upwards and then downwards. But at least I've got one. I didn't actually work on any other of the animations or anything else. It was literally just this all week. Which is a bit annoying, but at least I got this done, and it's reasonably well done. I'm actually, yeah, this is good. But that's all I have to show for you. Next week, I'll add the other two animations, which will be a whole lot simpler, especially with the work I've already laid down. And I will work on the world system and the world/biome. So I'll explain more of that in the next devlog. But until then, thank you for staying around. Trying to hit 100 subs in a few months, so that would be any sub-like interaction of any kind would be appreciated. I have a Twitter, @LurgyPie. All my handles are LurgyPie. But yeah, I'll see you all later, and never forget that you're loved. Bye-bye!